He's an entrepreneur he's an entrepreneur in residence with North Forge. Jerome, tell me how you say your last name. I didn't want to butcher it.
Conity.
Conity. Okay, that's what I thought. Do you want to take a minute and tell us about yourself, and then we'll jump into the Q&A, please?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, welcome everybody. Thanks for inviting me. I love talking to people about business and the journey. So I appreciate the invite. How do I start? Parents immigrated to Canada in a few decades ago. Didn't come from a very well-off background, and I found myself about probably 11 or 12 years old, and I really became hyper focused on a goal. I looked around at all the kids, and they all had like fresh Jordans and Reebok pumps and all these really cool things that I didn't have. And well, it was two things. One, it made me want to have those things, and then two, it made me want to understand why I wanted those things. So that kind of made me really delve into like the marketing side and PR. But I became hyper focused on that goal of opening up a retail store. So I worked at that goal. I knew the location, I knew the brands that I wanted to sell. I said I was like I say, like 12, 13 years old. And I just said, this is what I'm going to do. I became very passionate about it. And so I kind of worked towards that goal all throughout my my youth. Uh, at the age of 20, I started actively working on the business plan. So that I had to build up some capital first. So my first, well, I had multiple other jobs. My first real job was like grunt work at a lumber mill, piling lumber, 16 feet long 2x10s. So it taught a lot about work ethic. But built up the capital, got rejected by probably four or five banks in the process. But I did a very, very in-depth market study to understand my market, and I finally found somebody who took a risk. So I opened up my clothing retail store called Funky Threads. It's on the main street here in the Paw. It's been open now over 20 years. And it's extremely popular with people in general, but mostly young people, because we try to keep a pretty fresh edge on the kind of lines that we carry and what our brand is. And we were always really early adopters of anything digital. So like even if you went to our Facebook page right now, we live in a town with 5,000 people, and I think there's around 10,000 people on our Facebook page. And that kind of took me off into digital marketing. So my second business, it was really funny. I sold myself short. I didn't, I had people that were saying, hey, you should do digital marketing for me. And I said, no, like those are my secrets. Why would I want to give up those secrets? Like that doesn't make sense. And then I was sitting with my friend who's like a consultant from Winnipeg, and he said to me, "Do you have any idea how many of your ideas I steal and sell to big corporations?" And I remember being really upset at first. I was quite angry. And then I said, well, no, you're kind of right. Like, why am I selling myself short? Like, I'm in a really volatile industry. It really makes sense to kind of branch out and not have all my eggs in one basket. So I went into digital marketing probably around 12, 13 years ago, and have clients from all across Canada. Most of them are in northern Manitoba, but all over the place. Probably manage through all the different accounts that I manage. I probably have a 250,000 people, I guess, based upon the different accounts that I run. And that's been pretty fun work. And then the third business that I started was actually a beer business. So a friend and myself, we were talking and talking about starting up a beer company, and then finally said, okay, we got to stop talking about this and let's just do it. So we came up with a recipe. We partnered with Fort Garry Brewery out of Winnipeg, and then for 5 years we sold beer. Still not sure on what the next steps are on that, because that one didn't quite reach the profitability that we had hoped. But I'm just a serial business starter. And then I also took work with North Forge, which is a very well-known business incubator based out of Winnipeg. And that's been very fulfilling work. So I work with hundreds of business founders from all across the province, and all across Canada. And also just recently, I'm also teaching at it's called the SUV program, which is for international founders that are moving to Canada. So it's kind of neat. I get to help young people, people in the prairies, and now also new Canadians start up their businesses in Canada. So it's been a pretty interesting journey, lots of fun. And that's the quick summaries. And so I guess we can go right to Q&A. Oh,
Sure.
before I do that, I am going to drop something in the chat. Um, I don't know if the host can put that on there or how people are viewing this, but just in case you guys want to connect with me, that's some contact info. But yeah,
Perfect.
if anybody has questions.
No, that's great. And we can send out contact info to all of our teachers as well. So if any of the panelists want to send us any links to anything, just email it along to Shauna and she'll push it out to everybody. Um, First question on Funky Threads. You said you've had it for over 20 years. What advice would you have for somebody who was thinking of opening a clothing store of that ilk? And I suppose what's been the reason for the success of the store?
Okay, well, I'll do the first half. For Eddie's, I would probably recommend for most people starting out, because we actually help like there's probably about a dozen smaller brands that we actually help by giving them shelf space. Excuse me. The big thing there is obviously whatever you do, do it with passion. So you can't go into it like kind of halfway. It's like you got to plunge. Like you got to go in with your whole heart. And people love authenticity. So like it's you can't be fake. You have to really know what your message is and really kind of who you are, and then express that, because it's an art form, right? Clothing, like we don't think of that often, but like good brands have strong storytelling. And so if you have most companies now that are starting up, they're able to kind of run things from home. Like you can literally right now go online, put your designs online, use a third party, and then all you do is the marketing, and then you just get a check as each item sells, and you can just use like a third party to actually produce the clothing items. The only drawback on that is that obviously the margins aren't quite as well. So you could use that maybe to start off and then save your capital until you can get to the point where you can actually handle things in-house and warehouse things yourself, because then the margins would just be a lot stronger. And then going back to your second part of your question, I guess for the longevity, we just obviously I try to do the exact same thing what I just said. We just try to really be authentic, know who our customer is. It doesn't matter what business you're in. If you don't talk to your customer and understand their wants and needs, then you probably shouldn't really be in business, because you're there to serve. Like we don't really think of that. You think, oh, we're there to make money. It's like, well, yeah, but you're serving a need of somebody. So that's kind of what you have to always keep in mind, is that you're there to, uh, you're there for somebody else, and you're there to kind of tune into what they want.
Gotcha. Um, uh, One of the classrooms was asking, what's your most lucrative business, Funky Threads or your digital marketing?
Well, margin wise, it's definitely the consult work, because like Brent will attest to, the more work that you put in, the more you can get out. So like at some point you can saturate a market, and you can keep trying to push and sell ads, to sell more clothing. And the reach there is definitely good. And if I had to, go down to dollars and cents, definitely do make more money off of the clothing than off the consult work. But margin wise, and for the amount of time that I put in, the digital work is definitely strong, because like Brent was mentioning, you get the right contract, and like you're looking at, 10, 20, 30, 40, $100,000 contracts. And depending on the size of the organization, if like even for myself, I'm a one-man team, but I have a lot of subcontractors. So you get $100,000 gig, and then you sell off some of the smaller portions of that gig to smaller subcontractors, and you can walk away with a decent amount of cake for not a heck of a lot of work, other than just kind of being the organizer behind things.
That's great. On the digital marketing side, how do you prospect? How do you find new clients? Is it, are you cold calling? Is it word of mouth? Tell us how that works.
I use a combination. Most people, I know this sounds horrible, but I don't really actively advertise. And it's only because um I'd like to think of it as like my work speaks for itself. And what ends up happening is business clients will talk to somebody who hires me and says, "Holy, I love what are you doing? Like how are you making that work?" And they're like, "Oh, here, call Jerome. He'll take care of you." So that's like referrals are 99% of my business. And then, but with that said, I do try to supplement it a little bit with minor advertising. Like if I know that I have a whole bunch of bills coming up and I need to kind of drum up some business, I'll kind of shift into high gear and throw out a few social media ads to kind of drive some traffic to get, to get a few gigs to add to the cash flow. But for the most part, it is just through word of mouth.
Um, Somebody's asking, are there any digital marketing campaigns or particular client that you've done that you can share with our students that you're proud of or you thought were a little different or fun?
Yeah, probably the biggest one that I did was a national campaign through Chevrolet, the Good Deeds Cup. So I don't know who here watches hockey and who's into the hockey world, but in 2018, one of the teams that I was managing was a contestant in the Good Deeds Cup, and I managed that campaign nationally. Uh,
Wow.
and we ended up winning. We ended up saving our homeless shelter here with that money. It had a huge social impact, and all from a computer and the phone in the middle of the bush. And I know Roy can like literally, right? It's like
Yeah.
I guess that's the biggest thing I think that if there's a one key takeaway for kids or youth or sorry whoever's watching is like you guys have the power of the world in your hands. All of us old people that are up on the screen, like we maybe didn't have that, right? And I always talk to my kids because like they're like on TikTok or like playing Fortnite or whatever stuff. And it's like, guys, like you guys have the power to like literally reach and impact positively and make a buck, and it's
Yeah.
in your hands. And but it's up to you to decide to want to do that. You can sit there and you can doom scroll on TikTok all day. I'm as guilty as the next person, but at the same time you can also use that same time. You just have to flip that switch in your brain and say, hey, like this thing that's in my hand, I'm not addicted to it because it needs because I need it. It needs me, and I can use it to actually, to monetize and to make a buck.
Awesome. That's great. Any advice for students that are interested in digital marketing as far as how to sort of scratch that itch or explore it a little bit more? Are there things they should be looking towards post high school that they can take in school, post secondary? Any thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, there's definitely classes that you could take. Like Brent actually mentioned a few, like a few of them that you can take. The only reason for myself why I kind of shied away from all of them is I find that a lot of courses they just can't keep up with what's happening. So, for instance, like even within TikTok, how much it's changed in the last 4 years, and knowing like the best way to it's like when you're skating or trying to play hockey or any sport, the only way to get good at it is to use it, right? So you kind of have to go all in. You understand things. You're already on it, these different social medias and using it, and then you actually study it, and then you see what works and what doesn't work, and then you just kind of you keep learning. So definitely not trying to dissuade people from not taking education. Obviously, education is key and definitely push, like stay in school. But at the same time, I know for myself, I have tons of friends that have taken business administration courses. None of them are in business. For myself, I went to the School of Hard Knocks. I went in, I said, this is what I want to do. It's, and especially now it's 2024, literally every answer to every question you have is on the internet. Like, it's all there. So it's just a matter of you having the confidence. There are tons of resources, like for instance, like North Forge, all these different organizations, even, the one that's hosting today, they're all here to help you. So like you guys have the resources there. It's just kind of up to yourselves to make that decision and want to jump in.
That's terrific. Thanks so much. I'm running over, so I gotta jump off. That's really great. Thanks so much for sharing all those links and all this information, Jerome. That was terrific. I'm going to jump over to Zach Easton. Zach is a copywriter. Zach, can you hear and see me okay?
Sure can.
Awesome. Do you want to take a minute and just tell us about yourself and what you're doing, and then we'll jump to the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everybody. I guess a good place to start would be from the beginning. When I was in high school, that age, I had a beautiful, luscious head of hair, but I also had no clue of what I wanted to do with my life. I definitely felt the pressure and confusion of finding something to do for literally the rest of my life. So I tried a bunch of different career paths. I worked in a funeral home. I did construction. I worked in restaurants, scrubbing dishes. But still, I couldn't narrow it down. I knew I wanted to do something I was just passionate about, something that I cared about enough to do every single day, which eventually brought me to advertising. A friend recommended the creative communications program at Red River College, and I just instantly clicked with advertising. I felt it was, something kind of a combination of everything I liked: writing, creating art, film, connecting with people, always kind of things that I was interested in. So I figured that was a great match, and took me to working 6 years at a advertising agency in downtown Winnipeg. I loved it. I wrote all sorts of advertising campaigns from around the world: billboards, radio, TV commercials, radio scripts, social media stuff. I got to write it all and come up with the kind of thinking behind it and how to get more people to see it. But then 2 years ago, my soon-to-be wife and I purchased a restaurant called the Dairy Isle Drive-In in Minnedosa, Manitoba. We sell burgers and ice cream and all that good kind of stuff. So that was a massive, kind of unexpected, major turn in the road, but love it. I had zero experience owning a business. Wasn't a chef by any means, but I knew I was extremely passionate about serving great food, and I knew I cared about the work again. So yeah, we're currently in our second season open as owners, and it's been incredibly challenging, rewarding, and just overall, awesome. Couldn't be happier with that choice. Get free ice cream whenever I want it too, so that's a bonus. The Dairy Isle is just a seasonal restaurant, though, like a lot of small town diners, drive-ins. It's only actually open half the year, so in summer months I get to flip burgers and scoop ice cream. In the winter, I actually return to copywriting. I love it, so I figured I can get that kind of business going again in the winter on my free time. So I work as a freelancer, get to work on a contract basis, get to choose the projects case by case. Kind of what Roy was pointing out before. I kind of time my year around financially and when I have most time, so I get to pick and choose my projects and what I get to work on, and kind of reach out more to new clients around the world. Yeah, so it's definitely been kind of an unconventional path, but I couldn't be happier with where it's taken me. I kind of got the best of both worlds, really. I have that kind of steady, call it corporate gig or whatever you want to call it, and then I get to own my own business in the summer, and it's a good balance. But I think that's just because I always chose passion. Jerome was just talking about it. I chose passion over maybe the biggest paycheck I could find, but in both of my careers, I get to work with people I care about and do work I care about. So that was always the goal, and I figured I kind of found a good balance with that today. And that's my story, I guess.
That's great. Okay, got a bunch of questions already, but in layman's terms, what does a copywriter do?
Yeah, so a copywriter is the person who writes the messaging and comes up with the concept behind an advertising campaign. So any headline you read, any tagline, any commercial you see was kind of sprouted from the copywriter's desk, and them thinking about how the best way to sell Nike shoes is, or tacos is, and how to best connect with people, translating that into the messaging and overall concept behind the ad campaign.
Okay. How do you find clients for that?
Well, as a working at an agency, that wasn't my responsibility at all. So I never really had a big foot in that. But as a freelancer, it's all about networking and, working with other freelancers and other clients and kind of just keeping good relationships up. Like Brent mentioned too, it's all kind of coming together. It's just about keeping up with people and checking in and seeing if there's anything available as a freelancer. I'm lucky to still have some great connections in Winnipeg with my old agency and a couple new agencies across Canada that I'm working with. So it's all about networking, really.
Um, Somebody asks, are there some examples of writing that you've done that you can share with us?
Yeah, I guess a big client when I worked in Winnipeg was Recycle Everywhere, CBCRA. That was a big client of ours for years. I did a bunch of TV spots for them that you might have seen. One that had an alien involved in it, alien invasion or something, or induction or whatever you'd call that. That was probably a big one that was on TV across Canada.
And as far as the sort of thinking with how Jerome was talking about what's more lucrative, um, when you're doing the copywriting, like how much time do you typically put in? I suppose every account's different, but how much time will you put in versus what's the payoff? What's the income?
Yeah, on freelance, I think to me, not only I don't think of it as just time. I think of it as kind of exposure. Like if one agency comes to me with a bigger client, like for example, I worked on a pretty semi-major, kind of like a Chipotle in the States, and I thought this would be a great kind of way to kind of get more projects based in this industry. It was fun. It was retail. It was interesting to work on. So I put a little more hours into that project than I should have, but the payoff was more than just money. I think it's about, having building your portfolio and building your book of projects you want more of in the future. And so I think of it like that more so. I think if it's kind of a quick and maybe not easy job, but something like that, it takes less time and it may be a little less interesting than some other projects. So I kind of weigh it out based on a project.
Okay. Somebody asks this question. I'm surprised it didn't happen till now. But specific to your business, they're asking about do you use ChatGPT and how does that influence your work?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So I use ChatGPT on long form stuff. Like if a client wants me to write a bunch of blogs, like 1,200 word blogs, I'll start with the ChatGPT, I can't even say it, ChatGPT outline to
Yeah.
get me started. And I'll kind of edit it. It's not, um, I mean, I don't think it's something that you could use to really connect with people emotionally, despite what, people, billionaires might say to you, talking about a commercial script or something that's really meant to tug at your heartstrings. I don't think, you can really replace an actual human being speaking to other human beings in your audience. So I will use Chat GPT for like the long, kind of like tedious, like more straightforward writing. But in creative writing, I never use it. It's best to just go from your heart.
Okay. For somebody who is interested in copywriting, is there something in high school that they should be concentrating on or perhaps taking a course on in high school? And then likewise, once they're done high school, is there something university-wise that would help them in this regard?
Yeah, I think pay attention in your English class for sure. Punctuation is always important. Grammar and punctuation is important, but I definitely it wasn't my strongest subject in school even. So I kind of got into that after school writing and kind of ideating. But I really loved the creative communications program at Red River. It was a 2-year course. It was great. It was like it didn't feel like a big post-secondary thing. You were in a class with 30 people, all like-minded people, and I really enjoyed it. So I would definitely recommend that in Winnipeg.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about the really important stuff, the restaurant. Okay, so best part about owning a restaurant and what's the toughest part about it?
Best part is just when people love your food. It is a special thing bringing out a full platter of burgers and fries and milkshakes and just seeing people light up and coming to the window and saying thank you is amazing. And just, you can tell they genuinely really love the food, and all the praise you get with that, and the gratefulness that people show. The toughest part would probably just be the work, I guess. I mean, it's long hours, it's physical work. But I love that. I think it's good for you. I think it's a nice change up from me sitting at my computer in the winter. Um, the hours are long, but every hour is just fulfilling, and it goes towards making great food. So that it all kind of evens out, I think. When we first started last year, it was definitely stressful because all that was so new, and just massive like uncertainty. But I gotta say, it's I've definitely kind of gotten used to it, and I just love it, all of it.
What's the most popular thing on your menu?
The most popular thing on our menu are burgers. We do smash burgers, double cheeseburger al style is our most popular menu item. But hard ice cream, I always tell bubblegum is the biggest seller in
Nice.
summertime. But yeah, it's a lot of good things in my opinion. I've tried them all. So
We might have to cancel the rest of our mentors and just drill down on this menu because we're getting close to lunch.
yeah, hungry
Who
crowd.
write? Do you do advertising for your restaurant? And if so, I'm assuming you write it, or does somebody else write it?
Yeah, well, luckily I met my wife, my fiance, in Red River College Creative Communications. So she is very talented at marketing as well. So she is way better at photography. She's even a better writer than me. So she actually does a lot of that stuff before. I mean, in restaurant marketing, it's pretty simple. You put a great picture of a burger or a sundae or a shake up, something like that. You post it every day, and you say we're open, 11 till 9. Somebody's gonna look at it and go, oh, I'm kind of hungry. It's almost lunchtime or whatever. So it doesn't take as much deeper thinking as it is like when you're selling like insurance or something like that in my old job. So
Of
it's kind
course,
of different, but we both have a hand in that. It's definitely
of
important.
course. Well, that's awesome. I've run out of time, Zach, so I gotta jump to our next person. But you have a fascinating dual career going, and if I'm ever up in that neck of the woods, I will jump in for a double cheeseburger for sure. Thanks so much
Yeah,
for
please
joining
do
us.
stop in. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. Joining us now is Chris Carty. Chris is a real estate appraiser with the Jordan Appraisal Group. Chris, can you hear and see me okay?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
You bet. Do you want to take a minute or two and just
There's my
talk
dogs.
about no problem. Do you want to just talk about where your path and where you are right now, and then we'll jump into Q&A?
Yeah, for sure. So currently I'm a candidate member through the Appraisal Institute of Canada, or AIC, working to become a fully accredited professional appraiser. So the AIC, I guess, has sort of two branches of appraisers. There's the AACI, which is Accredited Appraiser of the Canadian Institute, and that's what I'm working towards. And then there's the CRAs, which is Canadian Residential Appraisers. So as an AACI, I'm able to appraise commercial properties, agriculture, and residential, whereas a CRA is only able to appraise residential properties. So to get into this, since I have my business degree or agribusiness, which I got through U of M, I was able to get into the fast track program, which is like an additional 10 courses I took, all online. Whereas if you were to start fresh, I think it's like a university program where it's a 4 years of classes, but you don't get a degree at the end. You get a professional designation behind your name. And all the courses are offered through University of British Columbia, which is, and they're offered online too. So that's great for me, for someone at a stage in my life where I need some income coming in. I'm able to work at the same time, and I don't have to move out to BC. So I've completed all the courses that's required for me to become an appraiser, but I still have to write a final exam and then go in front of a panel made up of appraisers and a ethics board to do an interview, and then they get the final say if I can become an appraiser or not. So as a candidate member, best way I can describe it is sort of like an apprenticeship. I need to find a co-signer or mentor. So they're gonna guide me along, teach me, educate, provide any help, but they also have to co-sign all my reports. So their signature and name is going on the report as well as mine. A bit about appraising, because I had no clue what appraising was until I met for an interview. But I guess the main reason people require appraisals, which is 90% of our jobs, is for financing. So the financial institutes, your banks and credit unions are our clients. So their members, say they're looking to buy a property or they want to refinance, the bank needs a third party estimate of value, so they know how much money to lend or know what their clients' members' assets are worth. Other reasons that someone might need an appraisal is pre-sale marketing. They want to know what their property's worth so they can get the right value if they place it on the market. Insurance purposes. Another big one is division of assets or divorces, which we've seen an influx since COVID. I guess couples having to spend 24/7 and locked in the same house, they just couldn't hack it anymore and decided to get divorced after COVID. So to do an appraisal, you first have to physically inspect the property. So you go out, visit the property, take lots of pictures, take notes on style, quality, construction, finish, layout, everything. You just makes it a lot easier at the physical inspection to get everything you require. Get back to the office and you start a narrative appraisal report, which is about 100 pages in length. So the first part is just describing the property, the market, the neighborhood, zoning, highest and best use. Just everything's in very detailed. And then you get into analysis. So there's 3 approaches to appraising a property. There's the cost approach, income approach, and direct comparison approach. So the cost approach is if there's any improvements on the property, you determine the replacement cost new, and then deduct any physical or functional depreciation or any obsolescence that may affect the property. There's the income approach, which is largely used for commercial properties, say like a fourplex or a strip mall, where you would determine what a landlord could achieve in renting that property out, then deduct any expenses like your property taxes, utilities, insurance, repair and maintenance, a management fee, which you're left with your net operating income, which then you apply a capitalization rate just to account for the risk associated with owning that property. And then the most popular way and mostly used way to determine the value of a property is the direct comparison approach. So you need to find a minimum of 3 comparables that have sold that are similar to the subject. And then you make adjustments to that comparable to make them more similar to the subject. So say your house, the subject house, has 3 full bathrooms and your comparable only has 2. So that's inferior to the subject. So you have to make an upward adjustment to account for the difference in value. Once you've used all these approaches, you then have to reconcile into one final estimate of value. Hopefully your range of values is quite narrow. Sometimes they're not, which then you have to do some more description of why they're not and which approach is the best to use. But yeah, there's no shortage of work. There's only a few commercial ag appraisers in the Westman region of Manitoba. So our office is based out of Manitoba. But I travel into Saskatchewan a bit, down to the US border, gone as far north as the Paw, but some of the residential appraisers in our office have gone quite a bit north than that. And then I've gone up to Winnipeg. Haven't gone into Winnipeg. There's several firms out of Winnipeg that'll just deal strictly with Winnipeg. So I've gone up to it though. But so we cover a large area. So like I said, like lots of jobs on the go. Which does keep me busy, but at times it is quite stressful. I am working long hours, put a work day in through the day, come home for a couple hours and work throughout the evening, work in the evening on weekends too, just to keep on top of files. And there is stress involved with tight deadlines. And of course, lots of times the clients are not happy with the value you come in at. They think that their property is worth hundreds of thousands more than what it is. So then you have to deal with that. It does get quite stressful, and there's always the threat of being sued. This is Manitoba, like Canada, I guess, is becoming more sue happy, especially as you go east, and it is starting to work its way west. So liability insurance is a requirement to be an appraiser, which can get quite pricey. But yeah, like I said, the job keeps me busy, keeps me occupied, which I do like. And there's 6 appraisers out of our office right now, 3 residential and 3 commercial ag appraisers. So I do like the group of people I do work with. And yeah, so there is talk about partnership in the future once I become fully accredited. But as of right now, I like where I'm at. Yeah, so I guess that's my story. There's like I've done lots of education before this, but sort of limited on time, so I just stuck with the appraising. But if we want to get into that, we can. So I'll open it up to questions.
Terrific. Big question right out of the hopper from the first one is how much money can I make being an appraiser?
Oh shit. So it is piecework. So the more time you put in, and as time goes on, you get more efficient in doing appraisals. But yeah, I don't know, want to put an exact number on it, but you can, depending, like commercial ag appraisals aren't the cheapest things, since there's not many appraisals and appraisers in our area. So say we charge a base rate of $2,000 a report, and they go up from there. So say I'm doing like a single agriculture quarter of land with a house, charge like 2,000, and then you charge additional fees for say additional quarters of land, not the full additional 2,000, but you can get done like 2 to 3 reports in a week, sort of thing. But and then as you become more education and more, if you become fully accredited or get fully accredited, you can, the earning potential is greater there. Yeah.
So I guess part of the work or the balance is you've got to balance physically going out and examining properties and taking all of your notes, and then you've got to sit down in front of your computer and write up that report, right?
Yeah, so usually I like to plan it out, sort of have one day on the road, like I'll put on sometimes over 1,000 K a day, just visiting properties, and then come back and then put everything together into the reports. A lot of the time spent is just going through sales that have happened within the province, within the market that you're working in. So just gathering sales and recording the data and just putting it into our systems. And then a lot of typing and narrative involved with this job too. So yeah, but for the most part, you are in the office and then get on the road. Yeah.
You were talking about additional education. What were you referring to there?
So I started off at ACC in Brandon, Assiniboine Community College. Took the business admin program. Didn't realize that's not what I liked. A lot of friends. I am from a farming background. A lot of friends were Aggies at U of M. So I said, heck, let's go do that. And still had no clue what I wanted to do. Went to school for a few years, had fun, ended up quitting, traveled, realized I'll go back to school, graduate. Got a full-time job with that. And then, so I had my ag business degree, and then had a full-time job, didn't like sales, so quit that and called up a family friend who I knew was looking for help, who had started this Jordan appraisal group. He was run off his feet, had no clue appraising was even a job, and here we are today. So and took the courses through UBC to get to where I am now. Yeah.
Okay. What does and I've got time for one more question and I gotta jump. What somebody's asking, sort of two-parter, is there anything in high school I can be doing as far as courses I take that would help me if I'm interested in this? And then education wise, after high school, what is it going to cost me to get the education to be an appraiser?
In high school, I don't know if there's really anything. I guess you do sort of, because I have my business degree. So with that, you needed your maths, I guess, and stuff like that. But really, I up until reaching out to my boss, current boss, I had no idea appraising was even a job, a thing that people required. But I think, yeah, just your maths really, just to get through that business degree part of the program. Now, I'm not sure if you were to start fresh taking these courses to become an appraiser, I'm not sure what their requirements are, because it's offered through UBC, but it's not a degree program, right? So I'm not 100% sure what they require, but for me, having my U of M degree, I required all that, like your accounting, your statistics, and all your maths and that. So
Okay, that's awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. That's a fascinating career. All the best. Safe travels as you tour the province doing appraisals.
all right,
Thanks so
Greg.
much. Okay, take care. Joining us next is Allison Garvey. She's a commodity merchant with Richardson International Limited. And Allison, can you hear and see me okay?
Yeah, I can. You can hear me?
Yeah, you bet. Do you want to take a minute and just tell us about yourself, and then we'll jump to the Q&A?
Yeah, for sure. So like Greg mentioned, I'm Allison and I'm a commodity merchant at Richardson International. When I graduated high school, I thought I wanted to be an architect. So I started university to become an architect, realized I didn't like that. So I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. So did that for a little while and realized that wasn't for me. And then I ended up taking some economics courses. And I fell in love with understanding international trade, which kind of led me to this current career path. My final degree that I graduated the U of M with was an agribusiness degree with a focus in economics. And that kind of led me to my job here at Richardson. So I cover international sales. I cover Mexico and Latin America, as well as Japan as a sales territory. So if anyone in those countries need to buy Canadian grain, I'm communicating with them and I'm talking with them about prices and when they need the grain and anything logistics wise for that cargo.
Interesting. Okay, so first question someone has is, when did you become interested in this career?
Yeah, I am actually from the city, so I know there's a couple other Aggies on here that probably have farming backgrounds, but I didn't even really know that this was a career path that I could have taken until I started taking some economics courses, and I decided to take an agriculture course just to kind of like understand more about the industry. And it wasn't until I took that agriculture course that I kind of realized that, you know what, I think this is what I want to end up doing.
Awesome. What was Richardson the first company that you started at as a commodity merchant?
Yeah, so I've actually been at Richardson for about 8 years now. I was lucky enough to get on with them as a co-op student. So while I was still in school, I did a summer term here. So I worked in our logistics department. And when I was done my schooling, they were nice enough to offer me a full-time job. So I accepted in our contracting department, and I did that for about 3 years. So I wrote contracts for grain sales as well as negotiated our freight contracts. And then I got into grain merchandising.
So can you explain a little bit? You mentioned you're talking to people in other countries about grain prices and the needs and the amounts for grain. Can you explain what does that mean exactly? How does that work?
Yeah, for sure. So I cover kind of a strange sales territory. So I cover Mexico and Latin America, and then Japan. And their country needs are quite different. The quality of grain is going to be different for those two countries. So there's a wide price gap in talking with those two countries. So I'm talking with the buyers on the other end, trying to figure out what price do they need to make it work to buy grain from us, and what price do we as Richardson need to sell the grain at to make it work. And sometimes there's also negotiating freight in that as well, depending on who is responsible for delivering the grain via a vessel. So that's another component, is understanding freight rates in addition to grain markets.
How much grain are one of these people slash companies buying? And dumb it, if you can, dumb it down for us.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't personally sell anything in a container. So I know if you've ever seen like a picture of a massive vessel in the ocean with a bunch of containers on that, I don't sell containers. I sell larger quantities. So that ship carrying all the containers, I would fill that grain with, or that vessel with grain. So you could be looking at somewhere between I don't know, like 15,000 metric tons upwards of 60,000 metric tons. So if you wanted to
So,
put it in a
sorry,
dollar value, you're talking
sure.
somewhere between, that vessel would be worth somewhere between, you could call it like $2 million to like $16 million, depending on the commodity and the size.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I was impressed with Funky Threads, and I was impressed with music in Churchill, but I didn't think I was going to talk to somebody who had $16 million of grain on a ship going across the ocean. Okay, that must be a cool feeling, or is it just gotten old and you do it every day?
Um, I think that it's really cool. And when I first started, I remember feeling really nervous because that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And now I think I've become a little bit more used to it, but it's still pretty cool sometimes to sit back and, just take a second to think about what I did or what we as a company also did. So I love it. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of understanding markets and customer needs and relationships. But it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. Um, do you have one of the questions someone has is, do you have an expectation to sort of stay in this job, or is there another area within your company that you'd like to go to, other than this role that you've got right now at Richardson?
Yeah. So I have never really worked on the buying side of our company. So buying grain from producers. I've always been more on the export side of it. So I would hope maybe at one point I can, transition into more of a buying role rather than a selling role. But I also like what I do now. So if that opportunity doesn't happen, I'd be okay with it.
Okay. Um, for somebody that's thinking about or is more interested in a career like this, what should they be doing, perhaps school-wise in high school or post-secondary education?
Yeah, for sure. I think biology is kind of important. I mean, you have to understand the crops that we're selling, which part of that is plant science. So biology is important. I wouldn't say that math is an absolute must, but I do look at numbers all the time. And it kind of, math is a part of economics as well, which is fairly important to my role. So you don't need to be phenomenal at math, but you need to have a basic understanding of how trends are formed.
Okay. Question from one of our classes is, what kind of hours do you have to work in this job, and do you get to work from home ever?
Yeah, so we don't have a work from home option here. It's a very fast environment that we work in. So none of us are in offices. All of us traders sit in like a very close environment and we're talking all the time. But the hours are a little bit tricky. Grain markets are actually open all night. So if someone wants to buy something in the middle of the night in Japan, I'm kind of up talking to them and we're negotiating prices. With my customers in Latin America, it's not as bad because we're roughly in the same time zone, but Japan they're normally getting started with their day around 10:30 or 11 are in the evening for us. So I just try to make sure I'm available if they need anything.
So do you get emails and calls that you have to answer at like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, I prior to this role, I worked on what we call our hedge desk. So I used to trade currencies as well as commodity futures. And I would have customers from all over the world calling me because they needed some sort of a transaction like facilitated. So I
That
sleep
is
with my
fast.
ringer on.
I guess so. I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, I have time for one more question, our last one. Does your job require a lot of travel?
Yes, I travel a lot. Right now it's kind of our slow season for travel. But I would say between the end of September into February, I probably travel 2 to 3 weeks out of the month. And then it really slows down.
And where are you traveling to?
Uh, this upcoming year, I will be doing a pretty big tour down into like South America, so Paraguay, Colombia, Chile, and then Mexico, and we'll also be doing Japan.
That is fascinating. Good for you. Well, I really appreciate you joining us. This was terrific. And to all of our mentors, thanks so much for joining us. Um, and it's been another great session. This is being recorded, of course, and it'll be posted for all of our teachers to access who weren't able to join us live. Thanks again to everybody and have a terrific day. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
See you,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.